The Vampire King's wedding vow should have been "till death do us part." Instead, it was 5 words that would haunt him for eternity: "Give me a child and disappear." Belle Winters stood there in her white dress, hearing the man she'd just married reduce her to a transaction, and in that moment, she didn't cry. She smiled. Because she knew something he didn't. You don't wound a woman who's already survived losing everything and expect her to just fade away. You certainly don't command her to vanish and think she won't take the one thing you need most with her. Viktor Coldwell was about to learn the hardest lesson of his 400-year life. The cruelest thing you can do to a king isn't kill him. It's make him realize too late that he destroyed the only thing worth ruling for. She stood in the grand marble bedroom of his London penthouse, still wearing her wedding dress, and heard the Vampire King she'd just married say the words that would change everything: "Give me a child and disappear from London." Belle's hands fell to her sides, the bouquet of white roses hitting the floor, and in that moment, she made a silent vow that would bring the most feared creature in England to his knees. Belle Winters had never imagined her wedding day would feel like a funeral. She stood before the floor-length mirror in the bridal suite of London's most exclusive supernatural venue, the Crimson Estate, adjusting the delicate lace sleeves of her gown for the 100th time. 23 years old, orphaned at 16, and working double shifts at a Seattle Starbucks just 6 months ago, she'd never expected to catch the attention of vampire royalty at a charity gala. Viktor Coldwell had pursued her with the intensity of a storm, all dark charm and dangerous smiles, and when he'd proposed after only 8 weeks, she'd said yes despite every rational bone in her body screaming caution. She'd convinced herself it was fate. That the loneliness she'd carried since losing her parents in that car crash had finally found its antidote. That a man, even a vampire, didn't pursue someone with such focus unless real feeling existed beneath the surface. She was wrong. Across London, in his private office at Coldwell Tower, Viktor stood at the window overlooking the Thames, watching the sunset bleed red across the water. 467 years old, king of the European Vampire Coalition, and absolutely certain of one thing: he didn't believe in love. What he believed in was legacy. Power. Bloodlines that would endure when empires fell to dust. His younger brother, Dante, had been killed 3 months ago by rogue werewolves in Prague. The loss had carved something cold and desperate into Viktor's chest. His family line, one of the original vampire houses, was dangerously close to extinction. He needed an heir. He needed it now. And he needed a human woman to carry that child, someone whose mortality would make the pregnancy possible, someone who wouldn't expect forever. Belle had been perfect. Beautiful, alone in the world, no family to ask questions or make demands. Kind enough to be manageable, naive enough to believe his performance of courtship was real. He straightened his black suit jacket, checked his reflection in the darkened window. White hair fell past his shoulders, a mark of his ancient bloodline, contrasting sharply with his young face and ice-blue eyes. Tonight he would marry her. Tonight he would begin securing his future. And tomorrow, he would begin the process of making sure she understood exactly what this arrangement truly was. The wedding ceremony had been beautiful, elegant, witnessed by 200 supernatural elite and exactly 0 people who genuinely cared about the bride. Belle had walked down the aisle alone, holding her father's watch and her bouquet for something borrowed from the dead. She'd spoken her vows with a trembling voice full of hope. Viktor had spoken his with the practiced ease of someone signing a business contract. Now, hours later, after the reception where she'd smiled until her face hurt and he'd barely touched her except for the obligatory first dance, they stood in his penthouse bedroom. Alone. Married. And Belle was about to discover what her new husband truly thought of her. Viktor poured himself a glass of aged bourbon, not bothering to offer her any. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. "So," Belle said softly, trying to bridge the gap, trying to find the man who'd sent her flowers every day for 2 months, "this is really happening. We're married." "Yes." He didn't turn around. "Which brings me to the terms of our arrangement." Arrangement. The word landed like a slap. I thought this was a marriage." "It is. Legally." He turned then, and the look in his eyes was so cold she actually stepped back. "But let me be clear about expectations, Belle. I need an heir. You will provide that. Once you're pregnant and the child is born healthy, you will take a very generous settlement, £10 million, and you will disappear from London. From England entirely, if possible. You'll sign away all parental rights. The child will be raised as Coldwell royalty, and you will become a memory. The room tilted. Belle's hand found the bedpost, gripping it to stay upright. You, what? I'm not interested in playing house. I'm not interested in a wife who lingers or makes demands or develops inconvenient emotional attachments. His voice was casual, almost bored. I married you because I need a human woman to carry my child. Vampire women can't conceive with our kind. You were suitable. Attractive enough, healthy, and most importantly, utterly alone in the world. No one to complicate things. You pursued me. Her voice cracked. You made me believe. I made you believe what was necessary. He took a sip of bourbon. Don't look so wounded. £10 million is more than generous for 9 months of work. Most women would be thrilled. Belle felt something inside her chest crack clean through. Not just her heart. Something deeper. The part of her that had spent 7 years believing she was worthy of love, that had survived her parents' death by holding on to hope that somewhere, someone would choose her and mean it. You don't get to do this. The words came out stronger than she felt. You don't get to make someone fall for you and then fall for me? He actually laughed. Belle, you fell for a performance. And now the show is over. Give me a child and disappear from London. Those are your options. Well, that or an annulment tonight and you leave with nothing. She stared at him, this beautiful monster she'd married, and felt something new rising through the grief. Something that tasted like fury. Fine. Her voice was ice now, matching his. You want a child? You'll get one. His eyebrow raised slightly, surprised by her shift in tone. But Viktor? She stepped closer, and for just a moment, she saw something flicker in his eyes. Uncertainty, maybe. You're going to regret every single word you just said. That's not a threat. It's a promise. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Empty words from a human girl who has nowhere else to go. She held his stare for one more second, then walked past him toward the guest bedroom, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a ghost. Viktor stood alone in his room, listening to the door click shut down the hall, and told himself he felt nothing but relief. He was wrong about that too. If you've made it this far, you're already hooked, and I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that subscribe button because you're about to witness the most satisfying revenge arc in vampire history, and I don't want you to miss a single second. This is the fastest growing vampire love stories community on YouTube, and we save seats for people who actually care about the story. So subscribe, then drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from because I genuinely want to know where my story lovers are. Don't make me beg. You know you want to see what happens next. Do you think Belle can actually make a 400-year-old vampire king regret his cruelty, or is she in over her head? Drop your thoughts below. 3 weeks passed in cold silence. Belle moved through Viktor's penthouse like a ghost, occupying the guest bedroom, taking her meals alone, avoiding him entirely. She'd signed the papers his lawyers brought. Prenuptial agreements, custody waivers to be enacted upon birth, financial settlements. All of it lawyer speak for exactly what he'd told her. She was an incubator with an expiration date. But she signed everything with a calm that unsettled even Viktor's oldest attorney. She didn't even negotiate, the lawyer mentioned during their meeting. Viktor shrugged. She's smart enough to know she has no leverage. What he didn't know was that Belle was planning. Researching. Learning everything she could about vampire law, about bloodline rights, about the intricate politics of the supernatural world. The penthouse had an extensive library, and Viktor barely noticed when books went missing. On the 22nd night of their marriage, Belle stood in the bathroom staring at 3 positive pregnancy tests lined up on the marble counter. Her hand moved to her still flat stomach. A baby. His baby. Growing inside her. She should have felt trapped. Instead, she felt powerful. She found Viktor in his study, reviewing territorial contracts. He glanced up when she entered, his expression carefully neutral. "I'm pregnant." She kept her voice flat, emotionless. Something flickered across his face. Relief, maybe. Or something else he quickly buried. He stood, moving around the desk with that predatory grace all old vampires possessed. "How far along?" 3 weeks. "I saw a supernatural physician today." He confirmed it. She met his eyes. Healthy. Strong heartbeat already. Apparently vampire-human hybrids develop faster than normal human pregnancies. Good. He nodded, businesslike. "I'll have my assistant arrange for the best prenatal care in London. You'll want for nothing during the pregnancy." How generous. Her tone could have frozen fire. He studied her for a long moment. She looked different than the hopeful bride he'd married. Thinner, yes, but harder somehow. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, and she wore simple black clothes that made her look older, more formidable. "Belle, this doesn't have to be unpleasant. You're carrying my heir. I'll ensure you're comfortable, safe, well provided for. Until the baby comes, and then I'm garbage to be disposed of." She smiled, and it was the coldest thing he'd ever seen on a human face. "I understand perfectly, Viktor. You've made the terms abundantly clear. Then why do I feel like you're planning something?" "Because you're paranoid." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Viktor? The doctor said stress is terrible for the baby. So I'll be needing some space from you. Completely separate living arrangements would be best. I'm thinking the East Wing. I'll have my things moved tomorrow." "The East Wing is perfectly suitable for someone carrying the last heir to the Coldwell bloodline," she interrupted. "Unless you'd prefer I stay stressed and risk complications?" He wanted to argue. Wanted to tell her she didn't give orders in his home. But she was right, and they both knew it. Her health, the baby's health, that was everything right now. "Fine. Take the East Wing." She smiled again, that terrible cold smile. "Thank you, husband." After she left, Viktor poured himself a drink and tried to ignore the way his chest tightened. This was what he wanted. Distance. A transactional arrangement. No messy emotions. So why did her coldness bother him more than her earlier tears had? The pregnancy progressed rapidly. By week 12, Belle looked 6 months along. The supernatural physician explained that damper pregnancies, children born of vampire and human unions, typically lasted only 5 to 6 months total. "The child will be powerful," the doctor told Viktor during a checkup Belle had reluctantly allowed him to attend. "I can already sense extraordinary strength. This baby may be one of the most formidable vampire-human hybrids born in centuries." Viktor felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Pride, yes. But also something else. Something that felt dangerously close to excitement. He glanced at Belle, who sat on the examination table in the East Wing's converted medical room, her hand resting protectively on her swollen belly. She hadn't looked at him once during the entire appointment. "Will she survive the birth?" Viktor asked. "If you're asking whether I care, the answer is it's required for your heir's health," Belle said coldly before the doctor could respond. "So yes, Viktor, I plan to survive. Don't worry." The doctor cleared his throat uncomfortably. "The mother is remarkably strong. I foresee no complications." After the doctor left, Viktor lingered in the doorway while Belle gathered her things. "You don't have to be so hostile," he said finally. She laughed, actually laughed, and the sound was bitter. "Hostile? Viktor, I'm being professional. This is a business arrangement, remember? You wanted an incubator, not a wife. Well, congratulations. You got exactly what you asked for. I never said, 'Give me a child and disappear from London.'" She quoted his words back to him with perfect, cutting accuracy. "Those were your exact words on our wedding night. I'm just making sure I fulfill my contract to your specifications." Things can still be civil between us. Civil. She tested the word. Sure. Civil is good. Professional. Detached. Exactly what you wanted. She moved past him toward the door, her movements careful with the extra weight she carried. Oh, and don't worry. I've already started looking at properties in New York. After the birth, you won't have to see me ever again. Just like you planned. She left him standing there, and Viktor realized with uncomfortable clarity that the idea of her disappearing to New York felt wrong. Felt like losing something valuable. He crushed that feeling immediately. This was the plan. This was what he needed. But late that night, he found himself standing outside the East Wing, listening to Belle talk softly to the baby in her womb. Her voice was gentle, loving, full of warmth she never showed him anymore. You're going to be so strong, she whispered. So powerful. And I need you to remember something, little one. I wanted you. Even if he doesn't want me, I want you with everything in me. Viktor's hand pressed against the door, and he almost knocked. Almost went in and said, what? That he was sorry? That he'd been cruel? He turned and walked away instead. Apologies were weakness, and he couldn't afford weakness. The attack came at month 4. Belle was in the penthouse library, reading about vampire succession laws, when the windows exploded inward. 3 rogue vampires, faces twisted with bloodlust, crashed into the room. The Coldwell heir, one hissed. Kill it before it's born. End the bloodline. Belle screamed, throwing herself behind a bookshelf as the vampires advanced. Her hands covered her belly instinctively, protectively. And then the air itself seemed to freeze. Viktor appeared in the doorway, and the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. His eyes had gone completely black, and the power rolling off him made the chandeliers shake. You dare enter my home. Each word was its own death sentence. What happened next was brutal and swift. Viktor moved like liquid death, faster than Belle's human eyes could track. The first vampire's head separated from his body before he could scream. The second tried to run and made it exactly 3 steps before Viktor's hand punched through his chest and ripped out his heart. The third vampire fell to his knees, begging. Please, we were paid, we didn't. Who paid you? Viktor's voice was so cold it burned. The Prague Pack. They wanted revenge for. Viktor ended him before he could finish. Then silence. Viktor stood among the ashes of his enemies, covered in blood, breathing hard. Slowly, the black faded from his eyes, and he turned to find Belle. She was pressed against the bookshelf, shaking, both hands cradling her belly. Tears streamed down her face. Belle. His voice changed completely, became almost gentle. Are you hurt? Is the baby? We're fine. Her voice trembled. We're fine, oh God, Viktor, they were going to kill us. He moved toward her carefully, like she was something fragile. They're dead. You're safe. I promise you're safe. And then Belle did something that surprised them both. She stumbled forward and collapsed against his chest, sobbing. Her hands clutched his blood-soaked shirt, and her whole body shook with the aftermath of terror. Viktor's arms came around her automatically, carefully, mindful of her belly between them. He held her while she cried, and something in his carefully constructed walls began to crack. I've got you, he murmured into her hair. I've got you both. Nothing will touch you. I swear it on my bloodline. She pulled back just enough to look up at him, and for the first time in months, there was something other than ice in her eyes. You saved us. Of course I did. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb wiping away tears. You're carrying my child. You're under my protection. Is that the only reason? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Viktor opened his mouth to say yes, to reinforce the walls, to push her away again. But looking down at her tear-stained face, feeling the rapid flutter of her heartbeat against his chest, he found the words wouldn't come. I don't know, he admitted quietly. The security team arrived then, breaking the moment. Viktor immediately shifted back into king mode, barking orders, demanding investigations, threatening retribution against anyone who'd helped the attackers. But that night, he didn't return to his wing. He stationed himself outside Belle's bedroom door and stood guard until sunrise. And Belle, lying in bed with her hands on her belly, felt the first dangerous stirrings of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was something real beneath his cruelty after all. The attack changed the dynamic between them. Viktor insisted Belle move back to the main wing where he could better protect her. She agreed, but took a suite adjacent to his rather than sharing his bedroom. Small steps. Careful boundaries. But proximity bred conversation. 3 days after the attack, Belle found Viktor in his private study at 2 in the morning. He sat in the darkness, a glass of untouched bourbon in his hand, staring at a portrait on the wall she'd never noticed before. "Can't sleep?" she asked from the doorway. He didn't startle. Vampire hearing meant he'd known she was coming. "The baby keeping you awake?" Kicking like a future martial arts champion. She moved into the room, her hand rubbing her belly. "Who's in the portrait?" Viktor was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, my family." "Before." Belle moved closer. The painting showed 4 people. A beautiful woman with white hair like Viktor's. A man who could only be his father, regal and powerful. Viktor himself, looking exactly as he did now. And a younger man with the same ice blue eyes but dark hair and a mischievous smile. "Dante," she said softly, remembering the name he'd mentioned once. "My younger brother." Viktor's voice was hollow. He was 212 years old when the Prague werewolves ambushed him. They tore him apart and left the pieces for me to find. His hand tightened on the glass. He was the good one, Belle. The one who still believed in love and honor and all the romantic nonsense our kind is supposed to have evolved past. He wanted to marry a human woman himself. Wanted children. Wanted a real family. And you stopped him? I mocked him for it. Viktor's laugh was bitter. Told him he was foolish. That humans were fragile and temporary and loving them was weakness. That our bloodline deserved better than dilution through sentiment. Belle sat down slowly in the chair across from him. "What happened to your parents?" "Dead 300 years now. Vampire politics. A rival house. It's always the same story." He finally looked at her. "I became king at 167. Spent the next 3 centuries building power, eliminating threats, making sure the Coldwell name meant fear and respect. I protected Dante because he was blood, but I never let him get too close. Never let anyone get close. Why? Because everyone I've ever loved has been ripped away." The words came out raw. "My parents. My closest friend murdered in front of me during the Great Vampire War. A woman I cared for once, killed to get to me. And finally, Dante. So I decided love was the weakness that got people killed, and I would never be weak again." Belle felt her heart crack open. "So you married me for an heir and planned to push me away before you could care?" "Yes." He met her eyes. "And it was working perfectly until you started being brave and fierce instead of broken. Until you looked at me with contempt instead of tears. Until you made me realize that maybe the weakness isn't loving someone. Maybe it's being too much of a coward to try." The air between them felt charged. Belle's hand moved unconsciously to her belly, where their child kicked against her palm. "I found something," she said quietly. "When I was researching vampire law. About damper children and inheritance rights." Viktor tensed. "What did you find?" "That in vampire law, a damper heir can only claim full bloodline rights if both parents formally acknowledge them. If the mother relinquishes her claim, the child becomes contested property. Other vampire houses can challenge for guardianship." She watched his face carefully. "You needed me to disappear because you thought a human mother would weaken your heir's position. But actually, me abandoning our child would do exactly that. His expression went completely still. You've been researching succession law. 4 months. Every book in your library. I also found records of the Prague Pact's vendetta against your family. They won't stop with one failed attack, Viktor. They'll keep coming for our baby. She leaned forward. You can't protect our child alone. Not from every threat. Not forever. What are you saying? I'm saying your plan was stupid and short-sighted and born from grief, not strategy. Her voice was firm but not unkind. You wanted me gone because you're terrified of losing someone else you love. But pushing me away doesn't protect our baby. It makes them vulnerable. Viktor stood abruptly, moving to the window. I don't love you. I didn't say you did. Belle stood too, moving beside him. But you could. And that terrifies you more than any enemy ever has. He turned to face her, and the vulnerability in his ancient eyes made him look young. What if I fail? What if I can't protect you both? What if caring about you gets you killed? What if it doesn't? She reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away. When he didn't, her hand touched his cheek. What if you're strong enough to protect what you love instead of destroying it preemptively? Viktor's hand covered hers, holding it against his face. I was cruel to you. Unforgivably cruel. Yes, you were. I don't deserve forgiveness. Probably not. She smiled sadly. But our baby deserves a father who's brave enough to try. Who's willing to fight his own demons as hard as he fights his enemies. Belle, I don't know if I can be what you need. Then start by being honest. With me and with yourself. She pulled her hand back. I'm going to bed. But Viktor? Think about what you really want. Not what fear tells you to want. What your heart wants, if you're brave enough to listen to it. She left him standing in the darkness, and Viktor pressed his forehead against the cold window glass. For 467 years, he'd survived by being ruthless. By cutting away anything that could be used against him. But Belle wasn't a weakness to be eliminated. She was strength he'd been too blind to recognize. And their child deserved better than a father who was too broken to try. The next morning, Belle found a gift outside her door. A leather journal with a note in Viktor's elegant handwriting, for recording memories for our child. So they know their mother's voice, even in writing. V. It was the first genuinely thoughtful thing he'd done since their wedding. She found him in the kitchen, of all places, attempting to make breakfast. The sight of the ancient vampire king wrestling with a waffle iron while wearing a pristine black suit was so absurd she actually laughed. He looked up, startled. I thought you might be hungry. You're making me waffles? Attempting to. I'm 400 years old and I've never used one of these infernal devices. He glared at the waffle iron like it was a personal enemy. How do humans operate this torture device? Belle moved beside him, trying not to smile. Let me help before you declare war on breakfast appliances. They worked in surprisingly comfortable silence, Belle guiding him through the process. When the first waffle emerged golden and perfect, Viktor looked ridiculously proud of himself. I made food, he announced, like he'd conquered nations. You absolutely did. Belle accepted the plate he offered, and their fingers brushed. Neither pulled away immediately. They ate together at the kitchen island, and Belle noticed Viktor watching her with something that looked almost like wonder. What? She asked. You laughed. At me, not with contempt. Just genuine amusement. He tilted his head. I don't think I've heard you laugh since before our wedding. You haven't given me much to laugh about. I know. He set down his fork. Belle, I want to try. To be better. To be someone worthy of you and our child. That's a nice speech, Viktor. But speeches are easy. You've proven that. Then let me prove it with actions. He stood, offering his hand. Come with me. There's something I want to show you. She hesitated, then took his hand. He led her through the penthouse to a locked door she'd never seen opened. Inside was a nursery that took her breath away. The room was painted in soft creams and golds, with a hand-carved crib that looked like it cost more than a car. But what caught her attention was the wall of portraits being painted. Images of her pregnant, of Viktor's hand on her belly, of the two of them together. "I commissioned them 2 weeks ago," Viktor said quietly. "I told myself it was just documentation. But the truth is, I wanted to remember these moments. Even if you left, I wanted to remember what it felt like to have you here." Belle moved through the room, touching the soft blankets, the stuffed animals, the rocking chair positioned by the window. "You did all this?" "I had help with the decorating, but I chose everything myself." He moved beside her. "This is where our child will sleep. Where I'll read to them. Where you'll sing lullabies, if you stay." "If I stay," she repeated. "I'm not going to pretend I'm suddenly a different person. I'm still difficult and controlling and emotionally stunted." His hand found hers again. "But I want to try to be someone you could choose. Not someone you're forced to tolerate for 9 months and then escape from." Belle turned to face him fully. "You hurt me, Viktor. Deeply. On what should have been one of the happiest nights of my life, you made me feel worthless. I know. I don't forgive easily. I'm my father's daughter that way. He used to say trust is like glass. Once it's shattered, you can piece it back together, but you'll always see the cracks. I understand. But," she continued, her hand moving to her belly, "our baby kicks hardest when they hear your voice. When you're near. And I think they deserve a chance to know their father. The real one. Not the terrified king hiding behind cruelty." Viktor's hand covered hers on her belly, and right on cue, the baby kicked strongly against both their palms. His eyes widened with wonder. "They're strong," he whispered. "Takes after their stubborn father." Belle smiled. "Viktor, I'm willing to try. To see if there's something real we can build. But you have to be all in. No more talk of me disappearing. No more walls. I'm in. Completely." He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "I promise you, Belle. I'll spend every day proving I'm worth this chance." For the first time since their wedding, Belle felt genuine hope bloom in her chest. They spent the rest of the day together. Viktor showed her his favorite places in London, told her stories about his long life, and listened to her talk about her childhood in Seattle, her parents, her dreams. That night, he asked if he could stay with her. Not for intimacy, just to be close. Belle agreed, and they fell asleep in the same bed for the first time as husband and wife, his hand protectively over their child, her back against his chest. It felt like a beginning. But good things, in their world, never lasted long. Is Viktor's change genuine, or is Belle setting herself up for more heartbreak? Let me know what you think is going to happen next. 2 weeks of careful happiness followed. Viktor was attentive, gentle, present in ways Belle had never imagined possible. He read pregnancy books. He attended every doctor's appointment. He held her when the baby's movements kept her awake and rubbed her swollen feet without complaint. Belle felt herself falling. Really falling. Not for the performance from before their wedding, but for this version of Viktor. The one who made terrible jokes to make her laugh. The one who looked at her like she hung the moon. The one who whispered to their baby about all the things they'd do together. She should have known it was too perfect. The call came at midnight. Viktor's phone rang with a tone Belle had never heard before. Emergency protocol. He answered immediately, his body going tense. When? His voice was ice. How many dead? Belle sat up in bed, heart pounding. Viktor, what's wrong? He held up a hand, listening. I'll handle it. Lock down the Eastern Territories. Kill anyone who resists. He ended the call and turned to her, his face carefully blank. I have to go to Paris. There's been an uprising. 3 of my territory lords have been murdered. I'll come with you. Absolutely not. You're 7 months pregnant with a target on your back. You'll stay here where it's safe. For how long? A week. Maybe 2. He was already dressing, moving with that preternatural vampire speed. I'll leave my best guards. You won't be alone. Viktor. Belle climbed out of bed, moving to him. Be careful. He kissed her forehead. Always am. I'll call every day. But he didn't. The first day passed with no word. Belle told herself he was busy. Crisis management. The second day, her calls went to voicemail. The third day, she started to worry. On the fourth day, a courier arrived with a legal document. Belle's hands shook as she read it. A revised custody agreement. New terms. Viktor wanted full, uncontested custody with Belle having supervised visitation rights only. 4 times a year. 2 hours each visit. The accompanying note was in his handwriting. I've reconsidered our arrangement. This is more appropriate given the circumstances. The original financial settlement still stands. Sign and return. Belle read it 3 times, certain she was misunderstanding. But the words didn't change. He'd done it again. Let her believe, let her hope, let her fall in love with him. And then ripped it away when it suited him. Her phone rang. Viktor's name flashed on the screen. She answered with shaking hands. Did you receive the documents? His voice was cold, businesslike. The voice from their wedding night. What is this, Viktor? It's the revised agreement. More realistic terms. We talked about this. You said you wanted to try. You said. I said many things. He cut her off. But I've had time to think clearly, away from the situation. A child needs stability, not a mother who'll resent being tied to a vampire king. This way is cleaner. Cleaner. Her voice broke. You're doing this again. You're pushing me away again. I'm being practical. Sign the papers, Belle. No. The word came out strong despite her tears. No, I won't. Then you'll get nothing. No visitation. No settlement. I'll make sure you never see this child. You can't do that. I'm the vampire king of Europe. I can do anything I want. His voice was cruel now, deliberately cutting. You were a means to an end. I got what I needed. Now it's time for you to accept reality and take the deal while it's offered. Belle felt something inside her shatter. Not crack. Shatter completely. I was right about you. On our wedding night. You're incapable of love. You're just a coward playing king, too broken to be anything real. Believe what you want. Sign the papers. Go to hell, Viktor. She hung up. And then she made a decision. If he wanted her gone, she'd go. But not the way he planned. Not beaten and broken and begging for scraps of time with her own child. Belle called the one person she'd been too proud to reach out to before. Her father's oldest friend, a lawyer in New York who'd offered help after her parents died. Bernard? It's Belle Winters. I need a favor. A big one. 3 days later, when Viktor's guards checked on her, they found the suite empty. Belle was gone. And so was every piece of documentation about the pregnancy, every medical record, every piece of evidence that the child existed. She disappeared. When Viktor returned to London and found her gone, he stood in the empty nursery and felt the full weight of what he'd done. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You wanted me to disappear. Congratulations. You'll never find us. Our child will grow up knowing their mother chose them over everything. And they'll never know the father who threw them both away. I hope your fear keeps you warm at night. It's all you have left now. Viktor read the message and felt something he hadn't experienced in 300 years. Complete and utter devastation. 6 months passed. Viktor turned London inside out looking for Belle. Every contact, every resource, every supernatural tracking method known to vampire kind. She'd vanished like smoke. His empire began to crumble. He couldn't focus. Couldn't care about territory disputes or political maneuvering. His advisors whispered that the king was broken. They were right. He stood in the nursery he'd built, the one Belle never got to use, holding the stuffed bear he'd chosen for their child. A child he'd never meet. A child who would grow up thinking their father hadn't wanted them. "You're an idiot," Dante's voice echoed in his memory. "You're going to die alone because you're too scared to live." His brother had been right. Viktor had spent 4 centuries surviving. But Belle had been right too. Survival wasn't the same as living. And he'd been too much of a coward to choose life when it was offered. The truth he'd been running from crashed over him with brutal clarity. He loved her. Had loved her maybe since that first real conversation in the kitchen over waffle irons. Had loved her when she'd stood up to him, when she'd refused to break, when she'd looked at him with contempt and challenged him to be better. And when she'd started looking at him with softness, with hope, with something that might have become love, he'd panicked. Because loving her meant she could be taken from him. Could be killed because of him. Could become another portrait on his wall of people he'd failed to protect. So he destroyed it himself. Better to push her away than watch her die, he told himself. But Belle hadn't died. She just stopped existing for him. And that was so much worse. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered immediately, desperately. "Belle?" "No." A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "But I have information about her. If you're interested." "Who is this?" "Someone who thinks you don't deserve what I'm about to give you. But the baby does." A pause. "She's in Seattle. Gave birth 4 months ago. A girl. Healthy. Beautiful. Belle works nights at a hospital as a patient advocate and takes care of your daughter during the day. She's exhausted and broke because she refused to touch her money. She tells your daughter stories every night about a king who forgot how to love." Viktor's hand tightened on the phone. "Where exactly in Seattle?" "I'll text you the address." "But Viktor? If you show up at her door and hurt her again, I'll make sure every vampire house in North America knows how you treated your child's mother. Your reputation won't survive it." "Who are you?" "Belle's emergency contact at the hospital. She doesn't have anyone else. No family. No support. Just a 4-month-old baby and a broken heart you gave her." The woman's voice hardened. "Fix it. Or stay away forever. Those are your only choices." She hung up. The address came through 60 seconds later. Viktor was on a plane to Seattle within the hour. He found the apartment building at dawn. Small. Run down. Nothing like the luxury she could have had if she'd taken his settlement. The stubbornness of it, the pride, it was so perfectly Belle that his chest ached. He stood outside her door for 10 minutes, listening. A baby's soft coos. Belle's exhausted voice singing a lullaby. "Hush now, little star. Mama's here. Always here. We don't need anyone else, do we? Just us. Just us forever." The loneliness in her voice broke him. Viktor knocked softly. The singing stopped. Footsteps. Then Belle's voice, wary. "Who is it?" "It's me." Silence. Long enough that he thought she wouldn't answer. Then the door opened a crack, chain still in place. Belle looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair pulled back messily. Wearing old sweatpants and a faded Seattle University t-shirt. Still the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "How did you find us?" Her voice was flat. "It doesn't matter. Belle, please. Let me in." "Why? So you can serve me with more legal papers?" Threatened to take my daughter? Our daughter. His voice cracked. Please. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. She stared at him for a long moment, then closed the door. He heard the chain slide free. The door opened fully. Viktor stepped inside the tiny apartment. It was clean but sparse. A bassinet in the corner. Baby supplies covering every surface. The financial evidence of how hard she'd been working to provide. And in the bassinet, wrapped in a pale pink blanket, was his daughter. Viktor moved toward her like a man in a dream. White hair, just like his. But Belle's face. Belle's nose. Sleeping peacefully with tiny fists curled near her face. Her name is Aurora, Belle said quietly. It means dawn. Because she's my new beginning. She's perfect. Viktor couldn't breathe. Belle, I don't. Belle's voice was sharp. Don't you dare come in here and try to explain. You made your choice. You pushed me away when I was vulnerable and pregnant because you were scared. Then you let me believe you changed, let me fall for you, and you did it again. You destroyed me twice, Viktor. Once wasn't enough for you. I know. Do you? Do you understand what it's like to love someone who keeps weaponizing that love against you? Tears spilled down her face. I've been alone since my parents died. Utterly alone. And you made me believe I didn't have to be anymore. Then you made sure I understood that I would always be alone. That no one would ever choose me and mean it. You were wrong. Viktor moved toward her, slowly. I choose you. I choose both of you. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I've broken you in ways I can't fix with words. But Belle, I love you. I have loved you probably since you called me a coward on our wedding night and meant it. I've just been too terrified to admit it because everyone I love dies and I couldn't survive losing you too. So you pushed me away first. Yes. I sabotaged us. I hurt you deliberately because I thought the pain I caused would be less than the pain of losing you to something I couldn't control. He laughed bitterly. But losing you to my own stupidity hurts so much worse. Because I could have had this. Had you, had her, had a family. And I threw it away because I'm a 400-year-old fool who forgot that love is supposed to be worth the risk. Belle wiped her eyes. You can't just show up and fix this with a speech, Viktor. I know. He pulled something from his pocket. A thick legal document. That's why I'm giving you this. She took it warily. What is it? Custody papers. Full custody to you. Legally binding. I have no rights unless you grant them. Your name on the birth certificate only. Everything in your control. He watched her face. I'm also transferring £50 million into a trust for Aurora. Accessible only by you. Whether you ever let me see her or not, she'll never want for anything. Belle stared at the papers. This gives you nothing. It gives me the chance to earn my way back into your life. If you'll let me. Viktor's voice was raw. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me prove that I can be the man you both deserve. Let me court you properly. Let me show up every day and be present and honest and real. Let me meet my daughter and be her father, if you decide I've earned that right. And if I say no, then I'll sign over everything in those papers and walk away. You'll never see me again. His hands were shaking. But Belle, I'm begging you. Please don't say no. Please give me one more chance to be brave instead of broken. Aurora chose that moment to wake, her little face scrunching up before she started to cry. Belle moved immediately to pick her up, cradling her close. Shoo, baby girl. Mama's here. Viktor watched them, and the longing on his face was so intense it hurt. Belle looked between her daughter and the man who'd shattered her heart twice. The man who was finally being honest. The man who'd given her complete control and was standing there vulnerable and terrified and real. If I let you stay, she said slowly, it's on my terms. You don't get to make demands. You don't get to control anything. You show up when I allow it. You leave when I ask. And if you hurt me again, if you even think about pushing me away, I will take our daughter and you will never find us. Not in this lifetime or any other. Yes. Anything. Whatever you need. Belle took a shaky breath. Aurora needs to be fed. There's a chair by the window. You can sit there. You can watch. But you don't get to hold her yet. You have to earn that. I understand. Viktor sat in the designated chair while Belle fed their daughter, and he watched with reverent attention. This was his family. This was what he'd almost destroyed. This was what he would spend the rest of his very long life protecting and cherishing and proving himself worthy of. Tell me about her, he said softly. Everything. Every moment I've missed. And Belle, because she was tired and heartbroken and desperately wanted to believe he meant it this time, began to talk. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. But it was a chance. And Viktor would make damn sure he didn't waste it. 3 months later, Viktor sat on the floor of Belle's living room in a considerably nicer apartment he'd convinced her to let him rent for them, watching Aurora attempt to roll over for the 15th time. Come on, little star, he encouraged. You're so close. Your mother says you're stubborn like me. Prove her right. Aurora gurgled at him and promptly spit up on his 5,000-pound suit. Viktor laughed. Actually laughed. Well played, daughter. Well played. Belle emerged from the bedroom, pausing in the doorway to watch them. This had become her favorite sight. Viktor, the ancient vampire king, reduced to a puddle of adoration by a 7-month-old baby girl. He came every single day. Brought groceries. Helped with laundry. Changed diapers without complaint. Read parenting books and asked Belle's opinion on everything. He'd been patient. Respectful. Present. Never pushing for more than she was ready to give. Some days she barely spoke to him. Other days they talked for hours after Aurora fell asleep. Slowly, carefully, she was learning to trust him again. She spit up on you, Belle observed. She did. I consider it an honor. Viktor gently wiped Aurora's mouth, then tried to clean his jacket. This is what I get for wearing Armani to baby duty. I told you to wear normal clothes. I'm a vampire king. I don't own normal clothes. He glanced up at her. Although I did buy jeans. Bernard said I look ridiculous in them, but the lady at the Gap seemed very enthusiastic about my purchase. Belle bit back a smile. You went to the Gap. I'm trying to understand human life. For Aurora. So she grows up with both sides of her heritage. He stood, lifting Aurora with practiced ease now. She immediately grabbed his hair and yanked. Oh. Yes, thank you for that feedback, little terror. Belle moved closer, taking Aurora from him. Their hands brushed, and neither pulled away immediately anymore. Progress. Viktor, can we talk? His expression became serious immediately. Of course. Is everything all right? She settled Aurora in her playpen with toys, then turned to face him. I got the job offer. The director position at Seattle Children's Hospital. It's what I've always wanted. Good salary. Benefits. Everything. Belle, that's incredible. Congratulations. There's just one problem. She took a breath. They want me to start in a month. And the position is full-time. I'd need childcare for Aurora. Reliable, trustworthy childcare. Viktor went very still. I see. Do you? You're about to tell me you can't accept because you don't have anyone to help with Aurora. And you're wondering if I'm going to point out that if you'd stayed in London, you'd have an entire staff available to help. Actually, Belle said softly, I was going to ask if you'd be willing to be Aurora's primary caregiver during the day. You don't sleep. You're insanely protective. She adores you. And I trust you with her. Viktor's eyes widened. You trust me? I'm still angry at you. I'm still hurt. I still wake up some nights convinced you're going to leave again. She moved closer to him. But yes, I trust you with our daughter. You've proven yourself, Viktor. Every single day for 3 months. You've shown up. You've been real. You've been the father she deserves. Belle. His voice was thick with emotion. I'm not saying I'm ready for more. I'm not saying I forgive you completely. But I'm saying I want to try. Really try. To build something real between us. If you're still willing. Viktor reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her face in his hands. I would wait 300 more years if that's what you needed. But Belle, I'm so incredibly willing. I love you. I love our daughter. I want to be your family. However long it takes. Whatever it requires. Then prove it. Help me build the life I want here. Be a partner, not a king. Be Aurora's father. And maybe, eventually, be my husband for real this time. Anything. He leaned his forehead against hers. Everything. I'm yours, Belle. For as long as you'll have me. She closed the distance between them, kissing him softly. It was careful, tentative, but real. When they pulled apart, both had tears in their eyes. One day at a time, she whispered. One day at a time, he agreed. Aurora chose that moment to start fussing, and they both moved to her immediately. A team. A family. That night, after Aurora was asleep and Belle had gone to bed, Viktor stood at the window of the apartment, looking out over Seattle. His phone buzzed. A message from his second-in-command in London. The Prague Pack has been eliminated. The threat is over. When are you coming home? Viktor glanced back at the bedroom where Belle slept, then at the nursery where Aurora dreamed. He typed his response. I am home. He put the phone away and settled into the chair beside Aurora's crib, where he spent every night keeping watch. Protecting what mattered most. A year ago, he'd been a king who had everything and nothing. Now he was a father, a partner earning his way back into his wife's heart, and a man who'd finally learned that love wasn't weakness. It was the only strength that mattered. Aurora stirred in her sleep, and Viktor reached into the crib, letting her tiny hand wrap around his finger. I promise you, little star, he whispered, you'll never doubt that you're loved. And your mother will never again doubt that she's cherished. I'll spend eternity proving it. Outside, dawn was breaking over Seattle. A new day. A new beginning. And for the first time in 467 years, Viktor Coldwell was exactly where he belonged. If you made it all the way here, you just witnessed what happens when a vampire king learns that real power isn't control, it's surrender. Now I need you to do something for me because I poured everything into this story. Hit that subscribe button right now if you're not already part of our family. This is the fastest growing vampire love stories community on YouTube, and you belong here with us. And here's the thing, if you loved Belle's journey from broken bride to fierce mother who made a king bow, the next story is even more emotionally devastating. I'm talking about a vampire who thought he could buy love, and the human woman who taught him you can't purchase what only surrender earns. Don't make me beg. You know you want more. Click that video on your screen right now. Your heart isn't done breaking and healing yet, and neither am I done telling stories that make you feel everything. See you in the next one, story lover. Don't keep me waiting.